Hey, it's your old pal Lucid Stu again, and we are back looking at the Federal Railroad Administration's high-speed rail corridors. This time we'll check out the North Carolina portion of the Southeast High-Speed Rail Corridor from Raleigh to Charlotte. The Southeast High-Speed Rail Corridor was one of 5 original corridors created by Congress in 1992, extending from Washington, D.C. to Charlotte, North Carolina. It was later expanded to cover most of the Southeast in 2 branches all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida. We've covered about half of that in previous videos, starting the first one in Charlotte and ending the last one in Raleigh. In this one, we'll bridge the gap and enable hypothetical high-speed rail travel all the way from Boston to Atlanta. The FRA's current view of high-speed rail everywhere but California, the Northeast Corridor, and the Keystone Corridor is 110 mile/hour diesel-electric with train sets like Amtrak's upcoming Arrows seen here. However, given the billions and decades that will cost, the premise of this series is to leapfrog that paradigm and go straight to electrified true high-speed rail, aiming for an average of 125 to 150 miles per hour. Let's set some guiding principles for attempting to accomplish that. Our core principles are speed and safety, cost, and urbanism. As you can see, each has its own subset of principles, some contradictory. We choose the best factors based on specific circumstance. Our region is the southeastern U.S., one of the fastest growing in the country. Our route is contained within the state of North Carolina, which has a population of 11 million. That makes it the 9th most populated in the United States, and with a roughly 11% per decade rate of growth, it could move up that list a few spots by the time a project like this could be finished. Let's look at the major metro areas involved. Charlotte, with a metro population of 2.9 million, is the largest in North Carolina. Home to the headquarters of Bank of America and Truist Financial, downtown Charlotte is a major national financial center. Charlotte has an expanding transit network which features light rail, streetcar, and bus service. Intercity rail is provided by Amtrak on several routes. Charlotte is also home to Charlotte Douglas International Airport. That is an American Airlines hub and one of the busiest airports in the country. Raleigh is the second largest metro at 1.6 million. That is the state capital. Last time we connected that to Richmond, Virginia with a modified version of the R2R route. Check that out if you're interested. Raleigh has bus service for transit and will soon be breaking ground on a series of bus rapid transit projects. Next, we have Greensboro with a metro population of 800,000. That is part of the larger Piedmont Triad region. Also in there is Winston-Salem, a metro of 700,000, which we will skip in this video, but you might be able to serve that with a spur line or something like this Appalachian trunk line. Check that out. Transit in Greensboro takes the form of bus service. Greensboro is also served by Piedmont Triad International. That is a smaller commercial airport that handles about 4% of Charlotte Douglas's traffic volume. Lastly, we have Durham, North Carolina, metro population of 620,000. That and Raleigh are part of the larger Research Triangle region, home to 3 major universities and a sizable tech industry. Transit in Durham is also through bus service. Between Raleigh and Durham is Raleigh-Durham International Airport. That is a mid-sized hub with about a quarter of Charlotte Douglas's traffic volume. All of these cities are served by Amtrak on the state-owned Piedmont Corridor, which is shared with Norfolk Southern. This situation would normally be ideal for a high-speed rail upgrade, but I judged this corridor to be largely unsuitable for significant speed upgrades. Currently planned upgrades would cut 24 minutes off a 3-hour, 13-minute trip between Raleigh and Charlotte, which now averages only 50 miles per hour. We'll strive for far better. To do that, we will utilize the Alstom Avelia Liberty, which has recently been put into service on the Northeast Corridor. This is a tilting train, which will be important on this not-so-straight path. Though it is currently limited to 160 miles per hour on the NEC, we will unlock that at its true top speed, 300 kilometers per hour, or about 185 miles per hour. We'll start in Raleigh where we left off last time with the question, to tunnel or not to tunnel? Raleigh looked fine on the surface as a terminus. Since we're running through this time, we'll go with a 2-mile tunnel under downtown and into a station below Raleigh Union's current platforms. Raleigh Union is located in a funky, rapidly densifying corner of downtown that is an interesting mix of old and new within a half-mile of the state capitol and the convention center. In the area around the station and the state prison, there is ample room for additional tracks, and we'll utilize that to bring our train back to the surface. The Piedmont Corridor here is mostly double-tracked, but mostly has room for 4 tracks. The idea would be to add 2 separate electrified tracks to the corridor if existing tracks could not be electrified for some reason. That would continue for 2 miles before utilizing Interstate 440 and Wade Avenue to transition to Interstate 40 near Meredith College and North Carolina State University. Interstate 40 is top speed fast here and also gives good access to Raleigh-Durham International Airport. Since this is an express, we'll skip the airport and continue on to our first stop, Durham. 3 miles past the airport, we will transition out of I-40 and back to the Piedmont Corridor at the expense of a Holiday Inn. There is ample room here for 2 additional tracks and some straightening. Some grade separations and viaducts would be necessary to handle interactions with road and freight spurs. We will traverse the Durham area for 8 miles at 110 miles per hour or slower to keep costs down and retain the good accessibility to downtown Durham at the current station site. Longer platforms would require closure of Duke Street or a more thoroughly raised station. The latter option would unfortunately spell doom for the world-famous Can Opener Bridge over Gregson Street. Stopping at Durham, let's explore travel time. From downtown Raleigh to downtown Durham, it is 24 miles. I have that taking 15 minutes for an average of 96 miles per hour. Our station is right across the street from a large bus depot. About half of Durham's compact downtown is within walking distance of the station, including an area ripe for redevelopment to the southwest. Out of Durham to the northwest would be a few more miles of Piedmont Corridor and then a transition to Interstate 85 on a big flyover ramp. After 10 miles, that would merge with Interstate 40 at Hillsboro. Unfortunately, the Piedmont Corridor here has a lot of slow-speed curves and seems to be surrounded by development in all the wrong places, making significant straightening highly unlikely. That's probably why planned upgrades are only going to cut long trip times down by 12%. Between Durham and Greensboro, we run across communities like Burlington that bring up other service patterns. Freeway stations are not always easy or useful here, which means a better option may be to tie between a high-speed trunk and the Piedmont Corridor at key locations where they cross or are adjacent. That would allow diesel-electric regional services access to the trunk while also getting into more city cores like the Piedmont Corridor does. Interstate 40 is not the best suited corridor for high-speed rail, but it's certainly better than the Piedmont Corridor, and most of the cruising between Durham and Greensboro would be in the 135 mile per hour range. For Greensboro, I chose an elevated station at Interstate 40 and Randleman. This is a rundown area with lots of potential for transit village-style redevelopment. This is 3 miles from downtown and its transit center, but excess capacity on Randleman and Freeman Mill could be utilized to run light rail or BRT between the 2 areas. Downtown Greensboro is not impossible for a station, but it does look difficult due to much tighter spaces and freight facilities. What I've chosen here is just one of many possible options. But we've reached our new Greensboro station. Let's check travel times. Durham to Greensboro, it is 52 miles. I have that taking 28 minutes for an average of 111 miles per hour. That renders a Raleigh to Greensboro time of 45 minutes and an average of 101 miles per hour. Compare that with Amtrak at twice the time. Departing our newly developed transit village in Greensboro, we would continue southwest by immediately transitioning from Interstate 40 to US 29. The freeway portion of US 29 lasts 3 miles before hooking up with Interstate 85 in a big interchange that we would fly right through on 3 miles of viaduct. Interstate 85 possesses an ample median past cities like High Point, Thomasville, and Lexington. Again, those are likely better served by trains that could utilize both a high-speed trunk and the Piedmont Corridor. There is also plenty of opportunity for side running along Interstate 85 here because it's a big corridor. The freeway is only 6 lanes and development around it isn't claustrophobic yet. This allows speed to hover mostly in the 135 to 150 mile per hour range between Greensboro and Charlotte. The median starts closing up around Salisbury, but geometry of the freeway is good enough in the area to facilitate top speed travel 185 miles per hour for about 10 miles through the city, running between the freeway and local frontage roads. As our route approaches Charlotte's outer beltway, Interstate 485, the freeway situation becomes a lot more complicated. Interstate 85 is crowded by frontage roads and other options are either occupied or circuitous. As a result, we'll utilize Interstate 485 to hook back up with the Piedmont Corridor. This could be accomplished with 2-mile-long viaducts connected by 2 miles of track in the freeway median. A tilting train would traverse this transition at about 75 miles per hour. This corridor is good overall but not perfect, and squeezing 2 more tracks into the area would require taking a fair amount of key trackside property. Again, electrification of 8 miles of the existing corridor is a simpler prospect, but how likely is that to happen? And expansion would likely be necessary anyway to accommodate the additional traffic. Lack of some grade separation and track geometry limitations would keep speed under 110 miles per hour the rest of the way into downtown Charlotte. The final question is how to get to a meaningful station location. Amtrak's station northeast of downtown is not desirable in terms of location, nor access to transit, nor proximity to viable transit-oriented development. As a result, I have chosen the future Charlotte Gateway Station as a stopping point. Once again, we're faced with the dilemma of whether or not the existing corridor would be available for the purpose, and I will assume no. Because of that, we're going to enter a 2-mile tunnel on the northeastern end of Norfolk Southern's Charlotte Yard and meet up with Charlotte Gateway Station underground. 2-mile tunnels on each end, no tunnels required between, but a fair amount of viaduct. Now that we're pulling into Charlotte, let's check travel times. From Greensboro to Charlotte, it is 89 miles. I have that taking 46 minutes for an average of 116 miles per hour. Raleigh to Charlotte would be 165 miles in 1 hour and 33 minutes. While not the fastest high-speed rail and below our 125 mile per hour target, that's less than half the current time. Charlotte Gateway is on the northwest side of downtown within walking distance of key destinations like Truist Field and Johnson & Wales University. It's also adjacent to a Greyhound depot and a streetcar line that runs through downtown. The plan for the area is transit-oriented development. It may be a ways out, but I threw some buildings in there to give a sense of the possibilities. This video closes the last link in a hypothetical East Coast Boston to Atlanta high-speed rail line. Referencing past videos, here are some times for that. Boston to Atlanta, 1,150 miles in 13 hours. That's currently an entire day. Washington, D.C. to Atlanta, 6 hours. That's less time than D.C. to Boston on Acela, despite being 200 miles further. Charlotte to New York City, 650 miles in 7 hours, a 6-hour savings. So we've described something of a budget solution between Raleigh and Charlotte, conforming mostly to interstate rights-of-way. What would it cost? But before we get to that, let's take a brief look at my cost estimation algorithm and some sample results. I have also amended this to reflect recent cost estimate inflation in major U.S. high-speed rail projects, namely California High-Speed Rail and Brightline West. All that said, for this 165-mile North Carolina high-speed rail system, I have a cost estimate of $33.2 billion. That's $200 million a mile. That's mainly down to urban tunneling, significant amounts of viaduct, and the suburban nature of the route. Not exactly a budget price. Being able to electrify key sections of the Piedmont Corridor would knock that down by about $7 billion. In terms of travel demand, intra-regional flights are minimal due to the distance. There are 8 daily nonstop round trips between Charlotte Douglas International and Raleigh Durham International. A spur to Winston-Salem would hook up with Piedmont Triad International, which astonishingly has 7 daily round trips to Charlotte, despite it being only 85 miles away, presumably because Charlotte is a hub. High-speed rail would be faster than and could replace all intra-regional flights. Charlotte to Raleigh, that would be the equivalent of about 340,000 trips a year, which is a nice built-in ridership. Amtrak's Piedmont service carries 400,000 trips a year, so you're looking at a base ridership of roughly 750,000. That's poor for the money, but you'd likely pick up riders from other sources as well. Intra-regional highway traffic averages about 120,000 vehicles a day. Assuming 50% are single occupancy vehicles and 3% capture, that would be another 650,000 trips, so a minimum of 1.4 million yearly trips is a reasonable assumption. Is that worth $26 to $33 billion? You decide. Let me know what you think of the route and the usefulness of possible travel times. Would connections to Atlanta and Washington, D.C. in the 3-hour range on an expanded Southeast high-speed rail corridor make a difference? Let me know in the comments. Believe it or not, there are still 3 Southeast high-speed rail videos left. It's that big a corridor. We're coming up on the holidays, so I'm planning some special content, and I will be back in Las Vegas in November to check out the progress on Brightline West, so there are plenty more videos to come. But that's all for now. Until next time, I'll see you on that big, beautiful freeway.